So thank you for those who are following my journey, trying to keep up to date with Office 365. It's almost like a weekly regime, maybe a daily regime, as I try and keep up with what's happening. Previously, I didn't really keep a lot of or take a lot of notice of the Message Center. I went into the Admin Center a few times occasionally to do various things, but wasn't really looking at the Message Center, and there's been a lot of work that's been put into it. So this is not only my way of trying to keep up to date, but also just putting it out there for discussion about what we've seen in a Message Center as well. So there are a few little announcements that what I've noticed is as I do this live stream, of course, it's still Friday in the States, so there are some releases that happen after I've done the live stream, and I did notice a few that were there. Now, you'll know that the Message Center is available there on the home screen within the Admin Center, and I like to sort of manage these alerts directly from the fuller experience. And I really didn't do a lot of, this is a hangover from my email habits. I leave everything in my inbox, and until recently I was just leaving it there, and there's a lot of blue numbers to say that I'm not reading messages. So I've begun to do shifting messages into the archive folder and then just letting archiving and retention deal with it. Same kind of thing with this Message Center, that up until yesterday there was a bunch of unread announcements in there, things to stay informed, planning for change, and I thought, well, actually a better way to manage this is as I clear them off and as I talk about them, I'm going to try and leave it nice and tidy, and look at Message Center Inbox 0 if that's a possibility. Now, there were a couple of announcements last week that I did want to go over just to talk a little about, and I found this one interesting, the email sending behavior for groups in Outlook. Now, there was an update that's supposed to try and reduce or remove when someone sends an email to the Office 365 group that they belong to. They subscribe to that group, and they seem to be getting a message back to their own inbox again, something that they've already sent. So, in normal circumstances, you send an email off to someone or to a group or a DL, you will have the copy of that message in your sent inbox or sent folder of your inbox, that's about it. You don't really need to see the message again. There are some people that still have this habit, and I guess it's from days of old, where they CC themselves into every message. Sometimes that's useful when you're sending it out to a big blind copy, a number of people that you're trying to send a message out to, but you don't want them all to know about each other, and so you CC yourself in to make sure that you see that message. So the hangover from that, when you use that kind of habit, is that you'll see a message come back into your to your inbox when you're sending it to an Office 365 group as well. So yeah, it's an interesting update there, but I'm not too bothered about that. I guess it helps some people who want to reduce the number of messages coming back to inbox 0. So yeah, that's cool. Now the other announcement, and I'm trying to model here too how to drive your way around the Message Center as I do this. So I work my way up the list. This is how I try and answer most of my emails as well. People will open up Outlook and they'll start from the top and go down, and sometimes never get to those messages that might have come in further back in time. So I try and do the same with the Message Center. I try and start from the bottom up. So it's the previous message. This is a regular update that you'll see in the Message Center, where you get an announcement to say that there has been a release of features, monthly features for Office 365 Pro Plus, Office 2016. And so this is a good one to have a look at. It's not really, it does affect you because each of the feature updates are within the update, and you'll have to go through and have a look at what those updates are. With each of these announcements, you can always click through to additional information, and in this case, I'll just do that now. This one will take you through to that list of updates that whenever something happens with the Office 365 Pro Plus, and within that suite of products, you'll see the feature updates for each of the applications. And this is a good one to go through if you want to keep an eye out on anything significant that might impact your organization, maybe a feature that people might start to click on and start to ask questions. You could prepare your support team to make sure that they know what's coming, and you can also look ahead and see how that might benefit your business or your organization. So that's a good one. There was a few actually we'll go back to here. There was a few that I might call my UOI. Instead of person of interest, it's updates of interest. And I've sort of picking on a few things here that I thought were quite interesting. The collaboration on attachments in real time. So that's a Outlook feature. And that feature, it's almost like it's already been there for a while, I believe, ever since we've been able to push a attachment into OneDrive. And then you have the OneDrive attachment, or the modern attachment. And so when you're sending out an email to a person or a group of people, and you've done that OneDrive attachment, the permissions are set at the time. You can say they're allowed to view it or they're allowed to edit it. Now, when they're allowed to edit it, this means that they can click on that modern attachment on the email message, and they click through and they can actually modify things with you directly from clicking through on that email. So it's a feature, but it's kind of already been there, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's there's something else that has been added, but it still felt the same to me as I looked at it. Still, it's a good thing. It's getting you to, rather than attach a file and be just that separate packet of data and that separate packet of information that you have to download, adjust, and then upload again, like in the old days, or maybe the current days for some people. Get into using modern attachments, and also look at doing the same when you've got a document sitting in a team site, which is attached to an Office 365 group or something along those lines. There's the Skype for Business consecutive or consultative transfer. Now, I'm not using Skype for Business PSTN calling. I think maybe this is a feature that is also being added to the client. As I understood it, there was something there already, but for those who maybe don't do this so much, I don't transfer a lot of calls for Skype for Business, but when a call comes in, rather than it being just a mad kind of, here you go, passing the ball, hospital pass, and sending that on to your colleague, you can do a consultative transfer, which is when you introduce the call to the person that you're going to transfer to. You might just, say, oh, this is such and such, and they've been calling about this problem or issue that they need assistance with, and then you can click and complete that transfer. So that's the consultative transfer. Yep, no, I'm saying that right. Early in the morning here. Consultative transfer, and also the toast message that comes up for Skype for Business when you have an online meeting. Now that appeared a few months back, and then it disappeared, and it's back again. And I like it, actually. It's when I've got an online meeting, it's like I've got another virtual colleague that is reaching out to me and saying, I've got an IM, or I've got a something that you should engage with via Skype for Business. So this toast pops up in your bottom right-hand corner by the system tray to say you have an online meeting, and now it says join rather than accept. Yes, that's the change there, but I just like the toast feature, so that's quite a good one. Right, so back to our message center. We do have, what have we got there? Previous. We've got a announcement there that those who are using the deferred channel for Office 365 Pro Plus updates will be getting the latest wave of updates. Now, remember there's different pace of updates that you can receive them. So the deferred channel is when, from memory, you want to receive feature updates every 3 months. And so this was, I wonder if this is actually the first time that the deferred channel has released those updates. Thinking back, might be wrong. But the idea is that now that's the wave of feature updates, and that you're being informed that that's about to be released. For those of us who might be using the faster channel, faster, I should know this, but receiving updates every month, then these are things that we're already seeing. So this is for an organization that wants to have a lot more control over those updates and the release. All right, the following one. This one is a special interest area of mine around education, and the learning tools, which were part of Word, part of OneNote as an application. These tools allow students and those with reading difficulties or visual impairments of sorts, they can use these tools to be able to better read the content within a document or within OneNote. And now these tools are available in OneNote Online. Now, the reason that's significant for the education sector is because there's quite a number of schools that are using devices like Chromebooks, where you can't install a OneNote app, you can't install a OneNote desktop application. It's all browser-based. And so this comes down to, let's say we'll use the Chromebook as the example, that a student wants to be able to use these tools to assist with their learning. Some of these tools are the text gets read aloud, and as it's being read, it will highlight the words. So I can see this. It has been used as a tool to help students learn to read, or even just to focus. And I know of some students and children that do have that struggle to focus sometimes, especially in the noisy classroom environments. That to be able to help trace along and read those words, it's a great tool. So being able to do that and a number of other tips there or rather features that you get, are now available in OneNote Online. So that's a big deal. That's really good. So good release there. Now, one of the big announcements too was the SharePoint framework that has been out available for developers and now is generally available. So just to try and illustrate that, I did come across a tweet or two. We're giving some examples of some of the new web parts that are available that work with the new SharePoint framework. Now, I think in a previous video I did, I started to call them page parts, because on the modern pages they don't feel like the old web parts. They feel like just something you add to a page, like if you were in Medium or the LinkedIn publication tool. You're just adding something, a piece of something to a page. And so okay, they're still called web parts. I was wrong, but page parts, whatever. So just to go through that, I followed through on this link. There was let me just flick on over to that. Yeah, Oliver Carpentier, sorry if I said that wrong, came up with 40 different web parts that you can add to the classic pages and the modern pages. So if you go through to his GitHub collection, he's got installation instructions there about how to get the web parts in. So that's going into the app catalog within your organization, something that a admin will have to do. And once you've dragged that in and applied it, then you can add these things to the page, and you can see two examples there. So what I've done is I've added that to my app catalog, and I've got my modern page here, and I'm adding one of the web parts. There's one there with the carousel. I've had to play with the accordion one, which I find quite useful for expanding on information, but you see all the different settings that you can create as part of that web part. So yeah, the SharePoint framework now makes a lot of things possible, a lot more variation in terms of the types of web parts that you can put on your page, and you can see that the classic SharePoint sites, if you're still using that form of page, because the modern pages are still quite new, things are still being rolled out, different layouts are not quite possible yet as far as I can see. And if you put a lot of work into your classic pages, then you want to take advantage of this new framework, but you don't necessarily want to flick over to the modern page experience. So I'm not a SharePoint developer, but I'm looking towards this because I want to see about how to programmatically create these pages and sites, and how the framework might fit in there and make my job easier. So that's a significant update, and I know a lot of SharePoint people are really looking forward to getting into this and trying out those web parts that they've been developing. All right, so in the other piece of significant news, the Office 365 connected Yammer groups. Now, it's interesting, the name in the Message Center is the reverse of how it's been talked about in blog posts. In blog posts, it's been called the Yammer connected Office 365 groups. And that's a significant announcement, a significant rollout, because for quite some time, roughly about 18 months, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes, as Steve Nguyen said, the non-sexy updates, where it's all about authentication, all about bringing together identity. He also mentioned things like compliance and the requirements there to try and make sure that it's up to par with the other Office 365 platform services. And so we had the honor of interviewing him. Laurie and Strant and I interviewed Steve Nguyen and Gus Florence, and we have just a quick replay over that. So we did a live broadcast. We're using Pexip to try and push it out to YouTube Live and to Facebook Live, and that went quite well. So if you do look at the show notes or follow along with our publication regarding Office 365, which is reoffice365.com, then you'll see a recap of that interview. And there's a good discussion there. We had some good questions from the live audience too that were just trying to dig a little deeper about the roadmap and compliance and other exciting topics there. But this is significant, and it means that now that much of the plumbing is done, and now that you have a connected Office 365 group, which the experience for the first wave is that a Yammer group still exists as a Yammer group, but as you create one, a new Yammer group, they will get a Office 365 group identity in the background. So first of all, it will appear within the global address list. It will also be in the Active Directory. So when people want to share something with that group, they can just look it up, just like they can with any other Office 365 group or security group. Following that, it's also going to provision the SharePoint site, the document libraries, of course, that go along with that, the OneNote notebook, and you'll also be able to use Planner as part of the connected group. Now, it's called connected group because you'll still have some Yammerness in there. You will see that you can, when you're starting your conversations and you attach something, the file that's attached to that conversation will still go to that old classic Yammer file storage area. But in the, I think it's the next wave or so, they're looking to unify that, to try and allow you to be able to, when you attach a document to a conversation, it's going to go through to the SharePoint document library. So it's connected, and at the moment it will feel like and it's a good thing, and there's been able to standardize on the type of SharePoint storage that other groups are using, like Microsoft Teams or the Outlook group experience. So yeah, big announcement, and we also managed to hear from Steve and from Angus that the development, the experience within Yammer and the features are all going to be ramping up. There's going to be more happening in there to start to use, and more in line with that Office 365 group's vision. So good announcement there. What have we got? We've also got plan for change. So I had turned on Intune within my organization. I was trying to use that actually to demonstrate the capabilities of rolling out applications in an application portal to the iPhone. That was for my demonstration in Ignite back in Atlanta in late September last year. So I was trying to demonstrate how to push out apps and make them easy to find, so that those in your organization who are using a mobile, using an iPhone, could easily find those applications that your organization uses. Now this announcement, this plan for change is the category, that Apple made some changes to their transport security, making it more secure. There are some things that you need to look into to make sure that if you are using custom apps, or you've had to create connections of sorts, that you want to make sure that they adhere to the new changes. And it looks like you've got in the next 30 days. So here's another reason why you should be looking at your Message Center. If you're not, and you don't look at it for months on end, and something changes, the Message Center announcement is there. So keep an eye out for it. So yeah, moving it right along, we do have a new feature around Visio and Visio Online. So it's now available for everyone to be able to look at a Visio diagram, and you can embed it into a SharePoint page. I think of the classic one that my old IT manager used to have, this really detailed particular floor plan of where everyone sits, and he would use it to detail who's sitting where, and so you could click through and you could find where that person is. And I think at one point we even began to embed that into our internal or on-premise SharePoint page. And so there's one example there that you'll be able to do, that making use of those Visio diagrams so that people can interact with them even though they don't necessarily have a full Visio license. So that's a really good update, and just adding more capability to collaboration and to communication of information. Alright, so this what was this one about? Changes to unused anonymous links. So this one, the anonymous link where you want to share a document and you don't necessarily want to send it directly to a person or invite a specific person. You just want to create a link and push it out there, and so you can either view that document or you can edit it. If you've created those sorts of links and they're still out there in the wild and still being used, and they have been created before May 2016, then soon they won't work. There's going to be some changes made to try and bring all of these kinds of anonymous links up to scratch, and so those old ones out in the wild weren't adhering to some of the security changes and functional changes. So we now have that capability to create a anonymous link and also expire it. So this is something that you really want to take advantage of, and hopefully if you've got any of those, I can imagine the scenario where some people have gone through and created all these anonymous links, maybe hyperlinked a page with all these different reference points, and just made it easy for people to click through and open up documents that might be stored in SharePoint. So just be mindful that if you've got anything like that kind of scenario, that sort of connection is going to break, and so you'll need to go back and recreate those links using a new method. So hopefully you've caught up to date with that one and already have in mind what you might need to change. We've had a change to the Microsoft Trust Center. This one, it's more about transparency. That Microsoft are trying to tell you that, well, we've changed some contractors, some subcontractors that are in the data processing side of things. So they list this in the Trust Center to say, here's the people that we now work with that are involved in this process. So all about transparency. And this last message in the Message Center was just a planned maintenance around the Yammer database update. So these sorts of things, they're quick changes. In the cloud world, that Microsoft try and do as much as they can without interruption, but some of these changes they do make will have an interruption, and 60 seconds is what it might take to, you'll be using Yammer and it will be taking longer to load, or it won't load at all for 60 seconds, and then it'll be back. And in some cases, I've got to say this, if you're in some parts of the world where the internet's not that great, sometimes you wait for 60 seconds for anything. So maybe that update will be quite invisible to you. Now, I'd like to finish off with a couple of tips and things that I found with Microsoft Teams, the organization that I work for, BitTitan. We've been using Microsoft Teams actually early on in the preview, sort of beta customers. So we've kind of become ingrained in how we're using it. And there's one thing that I recently have begun to do and trying to encourage people is, rather than creating a team for everything, that sometimes there is a team that already exists, and it makes sense to create a channel within that team if you want to, keep all that conversation together rather than fracturing it and creating this other separate team. And along with that, we have the capability to use Planner. So as I play through this demo, what you'll notice is that Teams now also has a tile. So that's been a little while coming in the preview, but here it is. Now I do notice too here that as we launch that, we're now missing the Office 365 bar and the app launcher. So you will have to keep track of where you are with that. And you see, I'm creating a plan within a channel, and the reason that I'm creating this plan is that I want to use it to try and track action items after a meeting, or even within a meeting. So we have this open, and we might be using Microsoft Teams for the meeting, and our team sometimes does. We can create these action items for people to follow up on at the conclusion of the meeting. And of course you can create another bucket to archive these sorts of things off too. But it's a good way to keep check, to go back and see, okay, has anyone completed that? You might make those sorts of notes within OneNote as well, but that's a good feature. Following along with that, there's another thing that I saw as a discussion on the techcommunity.microsoft.com, and as we were working with Teams, and I'll just close out here with this tip, going through the Teams, that when you are within a team and you have multiple channels, everyone in the team can access the channel. That's the idea. The channel might encapsulate different topics of discussion. I've got a team here that represents Webster Tech, and the idea is that this team is available to everyone in the company. Company of one at the moment, but just for demonstration purposes, I've created these channels to say, well, I've got a social media team, I've got a support team, and I might have other teams within there as well. So I've created a channel so that, sure, they might have their own team to have their own private conversations and use of private team sites for information, but as a company, we can have a channel for each of those logical teams, and then the conversation is all accessible to us. Now there are limitations to this. You've got up to 600 users that you can have within a team right now, so if you're a company that's larger, then this approach may not work. But what I wanted to finish off with is that the channels themselves can act like a distribution group, in the sense that if you want to belong to a channel, and you already belong to the team because you can see it, but if you want to belong to a channel, you favorite it. So within the application itself, on the desktop app, you will expand and see all the different channels, and you can click a star beside it. Within the browser experience, you can see I've opened it up and I put a star beside that. Now that's me favoriting the team, but it's more than just saying I want it to appear and be visible on the left-hand side all the time without having to expand all the different channels. What it is also doing is subscribing you to updates, in the sense that if I wanted to send a message to all of my social media team, I can use the @ symbol and do social media, and now I'm going to create a message that's going to be sent out to send a notification to everyone who has favorited that channel. So it's much like having that DL and saying, I'm sending a message, it's going out to everyone on that DL. This one, in the Microsoft Teams style of things, everyone will get a notification to say, hey, here's a message and such wants to get your input, and it draws everyone in. So that's the Message Center. That was the 3rd of March. I do encourage you to go back in here and keep up to date. Like I said, I'm going to keep trying to do that. You may have different messages in your Message Center just based on some of the services that you might have added to your subscription, or there might be certain things that are more specific to what's happening in your tenant. Like with my one, the Intune service that I've added there. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. I don't know how long this has been, But it's been good to be part of this, and thanks for watching. You'll be able to see this this archive later on my channel, and I'll also follow up with a quick post within the regarding Office 365 publication. So thanks again, and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.